I learned that it was time to go back to work. So by the time my youngest was 4 in preschool full-time, it was time to look for something else. And I got into development. That was another project that I had. I started developing shows. Somebody came to me with the idea to do a show on job creation, and everybody was unemployed at the time. So there was so much unemployment, and it was so rampant. It was, I think, above 10% nationally at this point. Even in Minnesota, it was way above 8%. I said, I'd be happy to host and help you produce. I have some skills, so let's work on that. We created the show called Opportunity Calling. It was about an executive recruiter identifying people who just were slipping through the cracks for some reason. She'd button them up, send them on an interview, and they'd hopefully get a job. And people were learning along the way how to create good resumes, how to find their niche, how to make a career shift if their career was going to the dinosaurs, that kind of thing. So it was a great show. We shot a sizzle reel, and it got up the chain at Oprah's new network. Which was my dream. I wanted the show to be on Oprah's network. I thought it was a great fit. But of course, alas, when it got to the top, they called me that day. The vice president of programming called me and said, well, Jordana thinks it's a good show, but we're going to pass. I was so sad.
I bet.
I was so sad. But that was sort of where my passion was. My passion wasn't necessarily development. My passion was about that show. But at that point, I had made a lot of good contacts in development with Discovery Network and Travel Network and TLC and Bravo. All of these people who had helped me create my show when I was just looking for advice had become confidants. So they said, Jor, we need a show. We're looking for another show. What have you got? Pitch us some ideas. So I said, let's try that. And one thing I was fascinated with was weather, and who better to go and talk about a weather show than Paul Douglas. And I called him up one day. I said, hey, what do you think about this? I'm concepting a show that I think you would be great at hosting. And he's like, come in, let's talk. And I did. And we talked, and we shot a sizzle reel for him. And that show got up the chain at the Travel Network. And then ultimately they said no. But that happens a lot. A lot of shows never get made. But Paul at the time had his company, Weather Nation, which is a private label weather company. They do weather forecasting services for other companies. And he said, we're considering launching a national network to compete with the Weather Channel. Would you be interested in coming to help launch the network? Sure, because how many people get a chance to launch a network? And that was really cool.
Exactly.
And he had a staff of meteorologists. He didn't have television people, and I was a television person. I didn't know everything, but I figured I could learn on the job. So that's what we did. His crew there is amazing. I went to work for him full-time and built this network, this couple hours of programming wheel that we could run on a daily basis and grow the programming to be able to compete with the likes of the Weather Channel. And that's exactly what we did and exactly what we do. It was an amazing experience, and Paul Douglas is a benevolent genius, that's how I describe him. And he's just a great human being. I grew in that role, and hopefully I served them well, and it was an incredible experience. Weather Nation TV, you can watch them on KR11.2.
Cool. Now, how did you end up getting this role that you have right now with WCCO Radio? Because obviously you had a lot of experience doing television. Was radio something you're like, oh yeah, I can, just show up in sweatpants and talk for 2 hours?
That's what I thought.
Yeah.
It's so funny because in college, I went to Syracuse, the Newhouse School of Mass Communications. In college, one of my favorite professors used to say to me, Jor, go for radio first. You're not ready for TV. Just try for radio. Your skills need to be polished. Your voice, you need voice work. Try for radio. It just happened that I got TV jobs. I'm grateful. It shook out that way. But I did send him an email a few months ago, and I said, well, Professor Lissett, you were right. I should have stuck with radio, because here I am, all these years later, 15 years later, whatever it is. So how did it happen? When I was at Weather Nation, Bob Schomper, who's my boss now, sent me an email out of nowhere. And he said, this may come out of the blue, but we are looking for a full-time host, and your name came up. When I was on Fox 29 here locally, we used to fill, news anchors at other stations would fill in and be Don Shelby for a day. Don had a show on WCCO Radio called the Don Shelby Show. And when he was on vacation, the other news anchors or other people would fill in and be Don for a day. Well, I filled in a couple times, and I was Don for a day. This is, I don't know, 10 years ago at this point.
Oh, wow, okay.
And I imagined that the people remembered me. Some of the people who work here remembered me or knew that I was out and about in the community, maybe familiar with people at Weather Nation. It's a small business, and we all know each other. So my name came up, but Bob didn't know me. He was new to the market. So he came out to Excelsior, and we had lunch. And at the time, I was really happy at Weather Nation. But Bob and I went down this path of possibly having a radio show. And when somebody offers you your own radio show on WCCO radio, that's not exactly something that you turn down.
Right.
It was this incredible opportunity.
Huge listenership, too. Yeah.
Huge listenership. It was just a way to connect with people again. And even though I was behind the scenes at Weather Nation TV, I was never on the air. And I was okay with that. I guess there was an aspect, a performance aspect of my life that I was missing. And I didn't realize that till I got here. But it's just so fun. How can you turn that down? Your own show. Absolutely.
Right.
So that's how I got here.